Yay!
I just got a message that said meeting is now streaming live on Facebook.
Woohoo!
All right. Okay, well, in that case, let me introduce our speaker tonight. Most of you know him. We're thrilled to have this new research that he's sharing with us. Dick Fox, as a former president, our current secretary of the Historical Society. He started his newspaper career September 27th in 1955 as an apprentice printer. He's retired now at the end of 2000 after 45 years in and around the newspaper business. He's the editor of our newsletter, which is probably one of our most popular features. So we're grateful that he gives us his expertise there. Approximately 25 of those 45 years were in production and production management, and 20 years on the vendor side of the business, installing, training, and selling newspaper computer systems for editorial, classified, and advertising departments. Dick, please go ahead.
Okay. Now, do the share.
Share screen.
All right, so then I'm ready to start. Is that right?
You are ready to start?
All right, are you seeing the first
And
screen?
you might want to make it larger. Yes,
Well,
and I can see folks on the side. I think that's me who needs to do something.
I can't make it any
There
larger.
we go. You're good. You're good.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Okay. Many of the, or some of the information about this event, we were somewhat aware of. In fact, back in April of 2014, Jeffrey Harmon wrote an article based upon some newspaper things that he ran across in doing some of his research. And so the basic story we had an understanding of, and the basic story was basically just the shooting of Asa Davis. We're now, we decided to retell the story because we got so much more information, and it came to us in a rather roundabout way. We got an email just about a year ago. It's either December of 2019 or January of 2020. So just about 12 months ago, we got an email to the info at Historic Society email address from a young lady in San Diego who is a college student. Her name is Lindsay Jaregi, and I invited Lindsay to join us tonight. And I haven't seen Lindsay log in. So if she's on the line, I'd like to have her acknowledge that. But anyway, Lindsay sent us some information that she had run across while she was doing some research. And her research as a student, if I'm understanding right, she was a part of a class project, and they were looking at trying to find old, unused railroad right-of-way rail beds that were still potentially available and perhaps could be linked together as part of some rapid transit things. So that was kind of what she was looking into. She knew about California Southern Railroad and all the history of it. Well, in one of the hits that she got on her research was curious to her, and it had to do with the coroner's inquest into the shooting of Asa Davis. So she sent us, she requested from the county, and interestingly enough, at the time that this event took place in 1886, there was no Riverside County. It was just San Diego and San Bernardino. So San Bernardino had shared with San Diego County a copy of this coroner's inquest. And I'm going to see if I can bring it up and show it to you because it's such a key part of the story tonight. Can you see this?
Yeah,
This-
Dick, I think if you just make it bigger, we'll have a better view.
Well, that's about as big as I can make it. Hang on.
I can see it fine, Dick.
Oh, actually, that made it worse.
I can see it fine.
Okay, all right. So anyway, this is the handwritten materials that were all part of the coroner's inquest in April 21st, 1886. And a court clerk or somebody that had to, they didn't do it in pencil because it's a legal document. And I'm just going to quickly scroll through it to share with you what the challenge was to interpret all of this and transcribe it. One of the interesting portions and it's on California Southern Railroad letterhead, and it's Mr. Davis's final ante-mortem statement. And I'll read that to you later on, and it is a hoot because it makes no sense. So this just gives you an idea of what it was that we inherited. And then here's a copy of the original summons to the jurors for the coroner's inquest. It's all signed by the 6 jurors. And there's an image of the material. So anyway, that just gives you an idea of what we started with. So okay, so now hopefully we're back with the main screen. Can you see the label screen? Okay, all right. Okay. In the transcribing of that material, that was a challenge. I made a stab at it, got some of it done, then called upon Rebecca, and she had worked for doctors for a number of years. So I was pretty used to interpreting scribbles. And we got pretty much all of it done between the two of us, except for some medical terminology. And my oldest daughter has been involved in medical records in the hospitals for 30 plus years. So I sent it to her and she got some surgical nurses involved, and we finally got all of the medical terminology figured out. Okay, so let's start and we'll share with you everything that we found out. Okay. Mr. Davis was the telegraph operator at the train station in Temecula. And on Monday, April 19th of 1886, and I've got here a day like any other day, people preparing for the arrival of the southbound train. Now, what's interesting in one of the side things that I renewed my own information about was that the resurrection of the train service from San Diego, from Colton to San Diego and San Diego and back, was certainly very positive for the area. And having the tracks had been washed out in February of 1884. And what was amazing to me was to find out that in 11 months, they had rebuilt all of that lost track down in Temecula Canyon. So on January 12th of 1885, they reactivated the train service, so it was back up and operational. So it was a daily activity for either a southbound or a northbound train coming through Temecula. And keep in mind, once again, that at this time, Temecula was in San Diego County. So when the train came into the station and stopped at the platform, Mr. Davis was, hello,
Counter.
somebody's talking. Okay. Mr. Davis he had a makeshift office in a boxcar right off of the platform. And he was in the process of sending a message on the telegraph. Mr. Davis was 39 years old. About the time that the train arrived, then a man, Frederick Foster, and some pals came onto the platform. And clearly, Mr. Foster was inebriated. He pulled out his pistol and started shouting. The conductor's name was Harrington, and he started shouting for Harrington. Apparently, he and Harrington had words a few days before. Now, there also were newspaper reports that he was heard shouting for Hackett, O.T. Hackett, the stage driver who happened to be on the platform when the train arrived. He was there on business. But so there was two versions, one that he was calling out Harrington's name and one Hackett's name. He fired random shots, mostly in the air, but one of them penetrated the side of the boxcar office, and it struck Mr. Davis in the abdomen. And witnesses that were there said he hollered, "My God, I am shot." Now, what's interesting is he finished the message he was sending and then sent another message to the headquarters that he had been wounded. And we'll get into that in a minute. It just so happens that a doctor was on the train, and the train was in a stop position, so they asked for a doctor, and sure enough, a young doctor, K. Net, and he had graduated. Now here it was, April. He had graduated from medical school in March. He had a little bag with him. He was going to San Diego looking for work and happened to be on the train. And he wrote about this event in his memoirs about 35 years later. Anyway, Dr. K. Net got off the train and examined the Mr. Davis, who was in great pain, and apparently abdominal injuries are quite painful in certain circumstances. So he was in a great deal of pain. He examined the wound area just below the navel and found a piece of what he called wire, which wouldn't be a surprise if the bullet struck a piece of wire or something, or a nail head or something coming through the wood. He removed the piece of wire, gave Mr. Davis some morphine to ease the pain a little bit, and Constable by the name of Banks was out looking for and trying to get a hold of Foster. At that time, Foster almost immediately said that he had no intention of shooting Mr. Davis, and he was certainly starting to feel sorry about it. So, like I indicated, Davis managed to send one last message to the office in San Bernardino advising that he'd been shot. They responded that they would send a special train to bring him to see Dr. Renee, who was the company doctor in San Bernardino. So this answered one of the questions. We knew that he had ended up dying from the wounds and that he died in San Bernardino, but nobody could figure out how he got there. Well, anyway, they sent the special train down, and it arrived about 4 that afternoon with a Dr. Adams on board, who loaded him on and returned him back up to Colton, and they arrived up there about 6 p.m. Dr. Adams, who was on the train with him, said that Davis just was absolutely convinced he was going to die. So anyway, Dr. Renee met Dr. Adams and the train. They transferred Mr. Davis to a flat car to take him to McCleary's place. And I have not been able to find out exactly what McCleary's place is, but it sounds like it was either a company name or somebody's house right near the railroad track where they could take Mr. Davis. The doctor found the bullet in his abdomen and gave it to the sheriff. Certainly Mr. Davis was in a very suffering position with the wound to his abdomen. Dr. Renee stayed with him until about 11:30 that evening. So we're still on Monday, the 19th of April. So the next day, Dr. Renee comes back at 7 in the morning and finds Davis in a great deal weaker. Dr. Renee indicated that he did not expect Davis to recover. He left about 10 o'clock and turned things over to Dr. Wainwright to monitor and stay with Davis. Davis makes his final statement and then passes away about 1:30. So he ends up living about 24 hours after he was shot. At the time here, before he made the final statement, he asked to see the sheriff and a member of the Knights of Pythias, which apparently is a fraternal organization. Sheriff Gill and a Mr. Carroll arrived about 9 a.m. Dr. Renee and Dr. Wainwright told Davis to make any statement that he thought was important, which I'll share with you in a minute. So Davis dies about 24 hours after he was shot. Going to take a couple of minutes here and just share with you some other of the information that we found, both in published information and the result of this coroner's inquest. The article describing the event from both the Dr. Canet, and then there was a passenger by the name of John Taylor. And Mr. Taylor happened to, for some reason, was in the box office area when the shooting occurred. And Davis stated that he did not know the man and was sure that the shooting was not intended. And at that time, Davis lamented about having gone through the Civil War without a scratch, and now he's going to end up dying from being shot on the job. Mr. Taylor was less than 6 feet away as a witness, and he indicated that he felt that it was an unintended accident. Certainly Mr. Foster seemed to be sobering up pretty quickly at this point. Share with you a couple of examples of some sensationalism type reporting that took place in those days. Here's one from the old Riverside Press and Horticulturist weekly paper. And it was a clipping the next day on April 20th. At Temecula yesterday, the railroad agent, Mr. Davis, was shot by a drunken cowboy. The latter is in safe hands, and if the wounded man dies, the assailant will be promptly strung up to the latest rulings of Judge Lynch. Some other reports out of the San Francisco Bulletin. Young Mexican standing nearby, intoxicated and flourishing a pistol, fired 2 shots. The wound was in the abdomen, and Davis died about noon. He was sure he was mortally hit and did not know at what moment he might die. The Mexican is under arrest. Now, we don't know that Mr. Foster was a Mexican, but somehow they figured that out. The LA Herald said Monday night, a couple of sheep herders of Temecula got too much tobacco juice, scab wash, or some other hot mixture aboard, which made their heads, legs, eyes, and hands all unsteady. armed to the teeth, seeing double, turned their artillery into active service. A stray ball inflicted severe wounds with probable fatal results. Okay, all right, so here's the coroner's inquest, and you can imagine the things that came out, and we'll share with you. And the big question is, we know that Mr. Davis got shot, but everything kind of pointed to there was no heavy bleeding of any kind. Mr. Cainette even mentioned that. So I've already shown you the materials we inherited. All right, so the coroner's inquest was on Wednesday, the 21st. Keep in mind the shooting was on Monday. Mr. Davis died on Tuesday, the 20th, and the coroner's inquest was the next day. So they didn't mess around. They moved in those days. It was held at the offices of the county coroner in San Bernardino. And it was a statement Mr. Davis made that morning, witnessed by the Dr. Renee and Mr. Carroll. This is what was his written or his final statement. Quote, "A message came to Lewis Wolf, signed by, telling about a fellow, Jose Maria, said he was dead. I came back to the office after delivering the message. I paid the operator, Fred Machado, came down, ordered me, that was good. Spanish just playing. I said it was good Spanish. I made it myself, but did not expect a greaser to read it. Spoke just in fun, as was my custom to Machado. The man that did the shooting was a family from Elsinore. He shot a pistol 2 times. I had a mind to tell him not to do so. Presently, he shot again. I was taking a message, the 3rd shot, which took effect in my body. I worked after I was shot. I saw him afterwards, sent for him to come and told him not to carry a pistol when he was drinking. I saw Machado come in afterwards and think he put up to shoot me from spite because I spoke to him in that way. This conversation took place 2 weeks ago, and ever since he acted spitefully towards me. The shooting took place about 1:30 p.m. on April 19th. And then Dr. Renee also asked him if he had anything to add, and he told Dr. Renee that he understood that he knew he was going to die. He also said that the more he thought of it, the more he was convinced that he was massacred. He said at the time he did not wish to do anyone or any wrongful anyone any wrongful hurt. So that was kind of a rambling ante-mortem statement from the victim here. All right, so the autopsy testimony of the doctors, they all recapped their involvement in the sequence of times that they met with him and etc. They confirmed that the witnessing of Davis, his antemortem statement, the details of the wound location, which I'll share here in a minute, and answers the jurors' questions. So the autopsy, essentially, the doctors said, bottom line, that the man died of shock. That it seemed clear to me and everything that I was reading that in today's modern world, he did not die at all. Now here's the, let me read to you this is the statement from the doctor that did, Dr. Wainwright that did Dr. Renee did the autopsy, and Dr. Wainwright observed and attested to it. Okay, so Dr. Renee, I heard made, which was right as I understand, in the post-mortem which I made by the request of the coroner, Mr. Huff, in the morning of the 21st of April at 8 a.m. was revealed that the gunshot wound was 1 inch left of the navel, 1 inch below, entering the abdominal cavity in a slanting direction toward the left. It passed through the mesentery, following close to the perineum, passed through the peritoneum at a place below the pelvic bone and lowest rib on the lateral and medium line of the left side, lodging in the muscle beneath the integument. The intestines were not penetrated. Question by the coroner: from which you know of this case, what is your opinion as to the immediate cause of his death? Answer: the gunshot wound he received. Question: the gunshot wound you examined, is it your opinion might have caused death? Answer: yes. Question: in what way is it possible it caused his death? Answer: by the shock he received, there being no evidence, no inflammation or penetration of anything in the peritoneum present. So now we got the arrest and the trial. So here it is, Thursday of that same week. The Constable Banks finally gets a warrant from Justice McGee, who was not available the previous day. McGee okays getting Foster arrested to await trial, and Constable Banks makes the arrest and transports him to San Diego. Okay, court proceedings on May 1. So we're less than, 10 days after the event. There was a hearing before Justice Monroe, ordered a $1,000 bond to await Superior Court trial. On July 7th, Fred Foster was charged and arraigned for manslaughter. He pled not guilty. The trial was set for July 20th, so they didn't mess around. Look there, July 7th, he was charged, and the 20th was set. 21st, the jury finds Foster not guilty, considered it an accident. We found no indication of whether or not there was any bail bond set. So the assumption is that if there was, or posted, I mean, the bail was set at 1,000, but there's no indication of it being posted. So it appears that Foster stayed in jail for 2 months. Clearly, the jury felt that it was an unintended accidental shooting, certainly reckless on Foster's part. One of the interesting things that, as a post-mortem to all of this, both Jeffrey Harmon and I have done extensive searches through all the means that we have with Ancestry and other places to see about finding where Mr. Davis was buried. And we can find no evidence, no indication anywhere where Asa C. Davis might be buried. There was an indication in one piece that somebody thought that he had been working in Mexico before he came to Temecula to take the telegraph job. So it's entirely possible that if he had family down there or friends, that might be why we can't find anything in the U.S. Regarding where Mr. Davis is buried, and there's nothing in the documentation that we received from San Diego County about that. So that's essentially the story of the shooting and the death and why and how Mr. Davis died. Certainly appears that in today's world, with the things that we have, that he would not have died from shock. So that concludes my presentation. And let me just hit the stop share here. So anyway, that's what I got. Any questions that anybody might have?
Yeah, let's go ahead and if you have a question, take yourself off of mute and ask away. I see in the chat just on the Facebook, and you mentioned it, Dick, in your presentation when the one newspaper said he was Mexican. We don't know why they said that.
Yeah, exactly.
That could be true or not.
Yeah, and that was kind of part of why I showed those, read those articles, because of the kind of a sensationalism that was going on at that time. They call it yellow journalism. There's a lot of that
I
sensational.
never heard that term. Yellow.
Yeah,
journalism.
I've heard. Did he have a
Wendy.
family?
Wendy's got a question. She actually put her hand up. She knows how to use Zoom.
Hey, Dick,
Yeah,
did you do any follow-up about Fred? Does anyone know what happened to him after all that?
no, we found nothing in our searching of his name, no.
Foster?
So whether or not he was just a transient, but after the trial, then there was, he was free to go.
Did he have family?
Don't know. Like I said, that at one point there was some indication that he had been working in Mexico before he came to Temecula to take the telegraph job. So if he had family and was and they were in Mexico or returned to that area, that may explain why we can't find any evidence of him being buried in any cemetery in the U.S.
Bonnie Martland, did you
Train
have a
go out on
question?
time or?
Yeah, Bonnie.
Yeah, did it delay the train? Yeah, did it delay the train or anything like that? Did the train go out on time or was there any
Well,
commotion
I
at the
would
train
imagine
station?
it was held up a little bit, but I can't imagine, they didn't miss the day. They got there before. It'd be interesting to know more about, clearly O.T. Hackett had a reason to be there, because he, with his stage, would meet the train for either passengers or freight or both. And nothing further in the way of information about what the conflict was between Mr. Davis and conductor Harrington. So apparently they'd had words, but
Hackett
and
still carrying
Foster was
mail at
known
that
to
time?
be a sheep herder working up in the Elsinore area. So they must have come south to Temecula to do their drinking that day. So
Tony, you have a question?
Drinking awfully early.
Yeah, but this my senior moment. I don't remember the question.
Well, it would seem to me that if this happened today, not only would Mr. Davis have survived, but Mr. Foster would not have just gotten off. We don't consider being drunk an accident anymore.
yeah.
There's another question on Facebook, Sherry, about where the telegraph office is in Temecula.
Well, it would the old railroad depot over there off of Pujol Street, and there's apparently a platform. Now, I don't know whether all this happened before the actual depot building was built. I have no information about when the depot building was built, which may explain why they had a platform there and then a boxcar to use as an office, which is where the telegraph office was, and whether they were using that office for selling tickets and etc. So, Rebecca, do you or Daryl know when the depot was built?
I would have to look it up. But you know, the location for that depot was actually farther north when it was a boxcar. So it was closer to Winchester.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I would have to look through some notes that are from
Closer to
Ken Noah
Winchester?
on that.
Yeah, further north.
Yeah.
Road.
By the way, Daryl has a question or statement.
Yeah, Dick, so am I to understand that that statement that you read from the deceased guy was a statement that's indicated some stuff that happened 2 weeks before the killing?
Well, yeah, it was just kind of a rambling statement from him, which even incomplete sentences. Now, I certainly think it's within the realm of possibility that whoever was writing down and documenting what his final statement was may have missed a word or two, but you know, we transcribed it as it was on that written material, and but yeah,
And morphine will make you say funny things too, like that.
well, exactly.
Yeah, it was-
I mean, he was remembering something that had happened 2 weeks before, and mixing that in with his final statement where he didn't wish to do anyone any wrongful injury. So you know, he didn't. I guess he understood that he thought it was an accident, but then at the same time, he said that the more he thought about it, the more he was convinced that he was massacred. So, you know, it was a mixture, a strange mixture of words that came out of him as that final statement.
Here's the way I interpreted it. The shooter was identified as a Mexican, is that correct?
Well, that's what the newspaper article said.
Okay.
So, you know,
And he was talking about conversations that he'd had with Mac Machado.
uh-huh.
And I think he was trying to figure out why he was shot. And so he equated the little bit of a argument or so forth that he'd had with Machado the 2 weeks before,
Right.
is what it seemed like to me that he was.
And he said in his statement something about playing good Spanish, but he thought it was good. He had done it in good Spanish. So it was, you know, when you read and reread this final antemortem statement of his, it just makes very little sense to the actual event. But it was certainly something that was on his mind.
Right.
Bonnie,
I was just thinking, you don't know in the 24 hours what they gave him for pain either. So he may have had some kind of narcotic that was in his system for the pain.
Well, that's true.
Might have
You know,
helped
we
make
do.
that as that rambling.
We do know that Dr. Canet gave him morphine at the train depot before he got taken up to San Bernardino. So we know that as a fact. And Dr. Canet's recount of this in his memoirs 35 years later was pretty interesting to run across also in the research. And it was just a few paragraphs in the middle of a pretty good sized book. So.
How long of a trip was it to San Bernardino? And was it a rough, bumpy trip for the patient?
Well, I would certainly imagine it wasn't comfortable. They did send a special train, and it was a car. It was a rail car from Temecula to Colton, and then they transferred him to a flat car. And they arrived here about 4 p.m. with the special train and arrived back in Colton about 6. So it's a 2-hour train ride. I don't know that's necessarily at full speed, but they did have a doctor with him in attendance. So I don't know what kind of smoothness factor you could existed in those days. So.
Dick, I think we have Nancy Cox there with a question. Hi,
Ah,
Nancy.
okay.
Hi, I'm from Riverside Historical Society, but I was interested in the jurisdiction I guess because he died in San Bernardino, that's why the San Bernardino coroner handled that. But where was the trial? Since
Well, okay,
Temecula, San Diego County at that
right.
time.
In 1886, there was San Diego County and San Bernardino County. There was no Riverside County at that time.
Right.
So the event took place in San Diego County, and that's where the trial was. They took him to San Bernardino because that's where the company doctor was and the company headquarters for California Southern Railroad. So that's why he got taken there. That was one of the questions we had, was how in the world did he get there? You know, we could figure out that since CSNR was located there in their headquarters, they could figure out that he went there, but why there, and just the company doctor, but how in the world did he get there was one of the questions we had for a long time.
Well, it's good that you got that part of the mystery solved.
Yep.
Yeah. Bonnie.
Yeah.
Yes, Bonnie
Can you
Martin.
hear me? I don't know if I'm, yeah.
Yep, I can
unmuted.
hear you.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay. Where did they keep Foster between the shooting and the trial?
Well, they
You know where he
must have kept him in San Diego,
you know,
because we
where
know from court
Take him to
records
Riverside?
that he was arraigned.
San Diego.
Hello, we know he was arraigned
Yes.
and a bail amount set. No evidence that he posted that bail, so he must have stayed in the jail in San Diego for that 2 months between the time he was arraigned and the trial. So that's the only thing the only assumption that I can make out of it. There was no evidence that he posted the bond. So, and $1,000 was a lot of money in those days. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did they take him that day, or did he stay in Temecula for a few days and then go down? Or
He
do
was
we know?
arrested. He was arrested on Thursday, the 22nd. Let me look back through here. He was arrested by Constable Banks on the 22nd, and they had to wait till the 22nd because Justice McGee was not available on Wednesday, the 21st, to sign the arrest warrant. So when he got the arrest warrant, Banks went out and found Foster and arrested him and took him to San Diego. No information on how they
Yeah,
got to
couple
San
of
Diego. Hello.
Must have been in Temecula for the couple of days then before he went down. Held
Well,
here
he may have
someplace.
been, but he arrested him on Thursday, the 22nd, and ended up taking him to San Diego. That was the information that we could find. He took him down there and booked him. And then on May 1st, they had a hearing where the bond was set. So he spent
It's
a few
very
days.
interesting to hear the names that we're familiar with in these roles.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, well, thank you so much. I
Lindsay,
just wanted to-
is Lindsay on the line? I'm seeing,
that's what I was gonna ask.
what's that?
Lindsay, we're wondering if that might be you down in the corner. The student who first brought this to our attention.
There's a iPad JER Jerdog logged in.
Tony says no.
Okay.
Well, we're really glad that she did bring it to our attention. And Dick, thank you so much for doing that research. That's, I want to say, a fun story, but of course it's not really a fun story, but it's fun to hear the story.
Well, it was fun getting here. We struggled with it a little bit, and like I say, it was kind of fun to hear from my daughter when she sent back the clarity on the medical terms about the various things. All of those areas in his abdomen, when I looked it up in a medical dictionary, they're all membranes around various organs and parts of the body in your abdomen. And the bullet didn't penetrate any of those membranes other than going through the skin below the belly button and the membrane on the underside of your skin. The intestines were not penetrated, and none of the other membranes that surround other vital organs. And there's actually a membrane around your spinal cord or your spine were these other things, and there was nothing else penetrated. So clearly the man died of shock that, he was so convinced he was going to die. He ended up living up to his own convictions. So
He could have had medical conditions, pre-existing medical conditions.
well, certainly, sure he could have, yeah. But he was
Or lost
39
some
years old.
blood.
It was assumed that he was in pretty good health, but we don't know that for a fact. So
Well, it does make
presume
me
to be-
curious to find Asa Davis in some Civil War. Just his statement that he survives the war, then dies on the job in Temecula.
Yeah.
That's something. Well, thank you so much. We hope you join us again on February 22nd. We have great attendance tonight. We will try to get it back on Facebook Live again and watch for it on our website. It's so good to see so many of you. We miss seeing you in person. And thank you. Thank you so much, Dick.
all right, appreciate everybody tuning in to listen to the story. So